Vatican visit. The Holy Father confirms a 2-day trip to one of the world's most Catholic nations. Sticker shock. A new report confirms the highest U.S. inflation in decades. We have White House reaction. Fight for the unborn. How one state representative is standing against Vermont's effort to codify abortion. And Ice Cream Sunday. The Archbishops of Los Angeles and Cincinnati have a friendly wager of treats and sweets on the Super Bowl. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, February 10th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this feast of Saint Scholastica. I'm Tracy Sable. The Vatican has announced that Pope Francis will make a 2-day trip to Malta in April. A prior trip was postponed 2 years ago due to the coronavirus pandemic. The Holy Father had welcomed a state delegation from Malta to the Vatican in March of 2019. This will be the third time a pope has visited the Mediterranean island nation, whose population is more than 90% Catholic. Inflation in the United States has hit a 40-year high, rising 7.5% higher than last year. This comes as President Joe Biden talks about lowering the cost of medicine. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, before he flew to Virginia today, President Joe Biden released a statement saying he's using, quote, every tool at his disposal to fight higher costs. And he says economic forecasters predict that prices will drop by year's end. Of course, that's a long time from now.
Taking no questions, President Joe Biden departs the White House. Compared to 1 year ago, inflation has soared under his watch. Montana Senator Steve Daines slamming that spike, tweeting, Montana families are continuing to suffer from rising prices with Joe Biden and the Democrats in charge. And Senator Joe Manchin warning,
it's 7.5%. That's a tax. And it continues to increase. It's not decreasing.
In Virginia, the president, while talking about lowering the price of health care and prescriptions, addressed inflation.
I know food prices are up, and we're working to bring them down. As I said, I grew up in a family where the price at the pump went up, you felt it, and I understand.
But as the president spoke, the truck blockade at the U.S. border by Canadians protesting the country's COVID-19 restrictions now impacting the auto industry, shutting down plants. The U.S. bracing for possible similar protests in major metro areas. President Biden is also facing several challenges on the broader world stage. He spoke yesterday with President Emmanuel Macron of France to discuss Russia's continued military buildup on Ukraine's borders. The United States just sent F-15 fighter jets to Poland to help defend NATO partners.
This is a dangerous moment for European security. The number of Russian forces is going up. The warning time for a possible attack is going down.
And National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with his Israeli counterpart to address security challenges impacting the Middle East, including the threats posed by Iran. And at the Olympics, Communist China being called out for its human rights abuses, including its genocide against Uyghur Muslims.
A lot of women subjected to involuntary abortion and sterilization. And so I think it's one of the most cruel and evil human rights abuses, and it was official government policy.
Members of the America First Policy Institute also tell EWTN News Nightly the threats from China extend beyond human rights abuses. Former Homeland Security leader Chad Wolf says China is attacking the U.S. economy every day by stealing our intellectual property. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Abortions in Texas fell by 60% in the first month since the state's heartbeat law went into effect. Nearly 2,200 abortions were reported in September 2021. That is compared to more than 1,500 the month before. In Georgia, a pro-life bill aimed at regulating dispensation of abortion pills has cleared the Senate's Health and Human Services Committee. The proposal would require a woman to receive a personal examination by a physician, but also ban delivery of abortion pills by mail. Meanwhile, in Vermont, legislators are aiming to codify abortion access. State lawmakers passed an amendment to their constitution, which will protect access to abortions and contraceptives. The Reproductive Liberty Amendment, before Prop 5 was approved 107 to 41. It will go before Vermont voters in November. And joining me now is State Representative Anne Donahue. Representative Donahue, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Can you talk to us a little bit more about this amendment and why it was proposed in the first place?
Well, it was presented as a necessary protection out of fear that the United States Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade. Unfortunately, it's a fairly deceptive proposal because it actually goes way far beyond Roe v. Wade. It's would lock into our Constitution absolute unfettered right to an undefined term, reproductive autonomy. So it's beyond abortion, but it also is absolutely no restrictions on abortion would be permitted under this amendment.
Can you talk to us about the significance, of this move, especially with the enactment of heartbeat laws in states such as Texas and the Dobbs case being considered by the Supreme Court?
Well, I think it's a reactionary decision. I think that it comes down to a fact that people are not willing to listen to each other at all anymore. And we have a significant group of Vermonters who are taking this very radical position and presenting it as if it's purely about rights. And if we really want to talk about human rights, we need to talk about all of the humans involved, but they're pretty dismissive of there being any rights at all on the other side of the question.
Yeah, and I read through that amendment, and I noticed it does not explicitly say the word abortion in it. Why is that? And also, can you talk about the types of consequences that vagueness of language could have?
Well, you're right. It does not use the word abortion because they wanted it to be broader, to be incorporating anything potentially in the future. It sort of goes, the sky's the limit. But what it actually also does is it puts it completely in the hands of a court or future court, because without a definition, that really leaves it unknown as to what it could incorporate. What sort of future, whether you want to talk about the right to a designer baby funded by the state, there's just no limit when you leave it undefined up for a court to decide. I think one of the scary consequences is we don't currently have conscience protection in Vermont, and one could read an amendment like that to mean, and you can't have any, because that would interfere with a woman's exercise of her right if there is a hospital, for instance, who doesn't want to provide abortions.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. I understand that you actually introduced a bill pertaining to conscious rights. What more can you tell us about that and the status of it?
Well, I've introduced it several times over several different sessions. There has been no interest by the majority to take it up. And during the floor debate on this constitutional amendment, I pointed out that the failure to take up conscience protection before passing this amendment would really lock the legislature out of being able to offer those protections. So you're basically telling someone you cannot choose a healthcare profession unless you're willing to participate in abortion, because you will not be protected.
I'm curious, what are you hearing personally from your constituents about this?
Not surprisingly, I'm hearing a mix. I'm hearing people who've said, please vote against this, please, and who are very grateful that I did. And there are others who encouraged me to vote for it. And I've been really trying to explain to them, you think you want to defend Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was very clear that the state the society has an interest in a developing life, even if it wasn't willing to say, it's a life of equal value. This amendment says there are no rights at all that society has. So it's much farther beyond what people think it is, and that's my job now to educate them.
Yeah, very, very scary. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but I'm wondering, as we mentioned, this is going up for a vote to voters in November. What would be your message to them when it comes to Prop 5?
Please ask and find out what it really means, because it's far more extreme than anything the other side is telling you. the sky's the limit, and you really don't want this, even if you support some abortion rights, unless you support up to 9 months, no limits, and unknown future.
Representative Donahue, thank you so much for your time today, and we will continue to watch this and see what happens. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Coming up, breathing easier. Find out which two nations are scaling back coronavirus restrictions. Plus, new developments for parishes throughout the Archdiocese of Chicago. Catholic parishes in the Archdiocese of Chicago are dramatically fewer. The reduction is part of a restructuring process which began 4 years ago called Renew My Church. Taking into account recent updates, the Archdiocese will have closed more than 120 parishes and decommissioned nearly 60 churches since 2018. And joining me now is Shannon Mullen, editor-in-chief of Catholic News Agency. Shannon, welcome back. Always so great to see you.
Thank you.
So what more can you tell us about this restructuring?
As you said, it started in 2016, so it's been a slow and painful process for the Catholics in the Archdiocese. I mean, I was talking with my managing editor before earlier today, and when you think about Chicago decades ago and these rich, vibrant, local ethnic parishes, and it really, sadly, it has been decimated since then. Since 1975, I believe, there are fully half as many priests as there were nearly 50 years ago. So it gives you a kind of a sense of what the realities are, that they're trying to find efficiencies. A lot of these buildings are quite old and in need of repair. So there's a lot of considerations that go into this kind of a plan.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's very devastating for the faithful. Can you talk about the impact on them?
Well, yeah, the devotion to some of these smaller parishes, especially in the city of Chicago and in the suburbs too. Yes, a lot of these families go back generations to these particular parishes. So it's going to be a very painful process to let go of that, even in cases where those churches will still be used. They'll have a new identity. They'll be grouped with other parishes. They'll share a priest. They'll share a pastor. So it's a hard thing to go through.
Yeah, and do we know, and maybe we don't, but what will happen to those churches that are no longer, going to have Mass?
Yeah, as you said, probably when the smoke clears, there's going to be about 60 churches, it sounds like, that will not be celebrating Mass anymore. Really sad. I mean, inevitably, where this has happened in other places, in Pittsburgh, in Cincinnati, where this is happening, they are sold off. Eventually, this is very valuable real estate, and that's part of the plan. It's very costly to maintain these properties. So.
Yeah, changing times, but still very, very sad. I want to switch gears a little bit. As you know, a number of places have kind of rolled back, that is, mask mandates. Also doing that in the Archdiocese of Chicago. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, well, the latest development in this really stems from last week. There was a state judge that declared the statewide school mask mandate to be against state law. So that ruling came out on Friday. Shortly after that, the Archdiocese of Chicago said, regardless of the ruling, we're still going to mask, which was a surprising announcement for many. There was more recently a local principal at a K-8 school, Queen of the Martyrs Church, that said, hey, we're going to make mask optional. There was some disciplining of him, I think, but then shortly after that, and this is a fast-moving story, the Archdiocese said, no, we're going to make masking optional in much of the Archdiocese, not the city of Chicago, though.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and there was a lot of support from what I read, for the principal for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, We're all tired of masks, there's no doubt about it, but parents, it's a different situation. There's a lot more urgency there. They see the cumulative effect of masking. Whether it's protected their child or not from COVID is another discussion, but the social losses, the language losses, the developmental losses, parents are starting to see that, and they're really becoming alarmed at the outcome.
Yeah, and it's continually evolving. I'm sure more and more we'll start to see things evolving from that. Kind of turning things forward to you, what are you all looking at as far as CNA? What are you working on?
Yes, well, one story is we had a story earlier in the week about a priest in Phoenix who it was discovered that he had been for decades saying baptisms invalidly. He was using the word "we baptize you" in the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, instead of "I." And that invalidates how many baptisms we don't know. When I was reading that story myself, of course, you think of, am I validly baptized?
Right.
And so we will have a story following up on that, kind of explaining the do's and don'ts of that situation. It's really a mind bender.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. That does raise a lot of questions.
Yes, I think there's going to be a lot of people digging through their old VCRs, tapes, to make sure that the right words were used for their baptisms and their children's baptisms. So
We'll be following that story as well. Shannon, thank you so much for coming. I always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, caring for the elderly. A closer look at the Holy Father's message about the dangers of assisted suicide. Plus, 2 archbishops place a friendly wager on the Super Bowl. We'll explain. In Portugal, a committee investigating sexual abuse in the church says that it has received allegations from 214 people. These cover a time period between 1933 and 2006. The independent lay committee began its work at the beginning of this year. While church leaders in one region in Canada say they will follow a government order that only allows people who've been vaccinated against COVID-19 to attend religious services. Catholic bishops in Quebec say they oppose the mandate and will continue to ask that it be lifted. And for more on this story, including what the bishops are saying to government officials about the importance of attending Mass, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Well, Spain is ending its outdoor mask mandate as its coronavirus cases decline. Protective masks will remain mandatory for indoor public spaces and on public transportation. Social distancing practices will also continue. Meanwhile, across the globe, the Philippines lifted its ban on foreign travelers, and that is making one incoming visitor quite happy.
It's just a wonderful country. I'm so glad that you're open again.
Travelers who adhere to prevention protocols will no longer be required to quarantine upon arrival. Today's move will provide a boost to tourism and related industries in the Philippines as its Omicron variant surge eases. A 3-day conference organized by a Vatican group began today, addressing caring for those with serious or terminal illnesses. The Pontifical Academy for Life organized the online event. It aims to fight the rise in assisted suicide around the world. Joining us now from Rome is Professor Christopher Ostgathe, president of European Association for Palliative Care. Professor, great to see you. Thank you for your time. Do you mind, can you tell us a little bit more about this meeting and also about the rise in assisted suicide laws around the world? Very concerning. Pope Francis even made remarks about it yesterday at his weekly meeting with pilgrims.
Yeah, I had the honor to participate in a meeting at the Pontifical Academy for Life yesterday and today. And we've been talking a lot about palliative care, state-of-the-art palliative care all over the world. And as you have already stated it, about the rise of euthanasia laws and laws on physician-assisted suicide all over the world. What concerns me in this regard is that we have a rising number of countries where we have those laws, and some of them already for 20 or 25 years, and that in those countries the criteria for assisted dying is successively opened and widened, starting out from very ill and extremely suffering people now to people that are just old or just sick of life. And that is something that really concerns me.
Yeah, it is very, very concerning. I understand that you spoke yesterday in the opening session. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What was your message?
Palliative care, and I'm very happy that the Pope is putting it more and more on his agenda, is an approach where we look at patients that are ill, that can't be cured, but where we try to achieve best possible quality of life for the remaining time. And on the one hand side, it's a story of success. It started in the 1960s and really has evolved over time from slow initiatives. Now it has reached universities. A lot of people are well-trained, doctors, nurses, psychologists, spiritual carers. They all take care of the family, the patient, and they achieve that even with a progressive disease, patients feel that their life is still worth living. But on the other hand, we are also seeing that we have problems. Palliative care is only accessible in the minority of countries. 14% of the countries have access to palliative care. 86% of the patients in need worldwide don't have a good access to palliative care. We see that there's a problem in opioids throughout the world, that people who are in pain don't have the possibility to have an opioid prescribed. And there are so many problems around that. The second issue is that what we just talked about, that we have a lot of countries worldwide looking at euthanasia and having laws regarding this. And this means a major concern for palliative care over the next years. We have to cope with that situation.
Professor, we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm curious, what do you hope ultimately comes out of this 3-day meeting?
I think it is very important that all societal structures really work together to achieve what we want to achieve, that palliative care becomes a human right for every patient who is in need. Life is by 100% lethal. So everybody is going to die. Everybody will go through the last phase of life. And it would be just wonderful if we achieve that everybody who has palliative care needs will achieve this. And this meeting here today brings together so much experience, so much experts, and so much strength with the churches, with research, with the clinicians, that could be a very good start for further development of palliative care worldwide.
Professor Ostgathe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us about all of this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your questions. Have a good day.
Well, as the 2022 Winter Olympics continue in Beijing, we want to update you on the current medal count. Topping the list with the most gold medals is Germany, followed by Norway and Austria. The U.S. has 4 golds, 5 silvers, and 1 bronze for a total of 10 medals. The Netherlands rounds out the top 5. And finally tonight, the Super Bowl is this Sunday, pitting the Los Angeles Rams against the Cincinnati Bengals. And for one church leader, the outcome promises to be a sweet one. Cincinnati Archbishop Dennis Schnurr, who you see right there on the left, made a friendly wager with Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez on the right. Now, if the Bengals pull off the upset, Archbishop Schnurr will receive pastries from a famous L.A. bakery. Love that. And if the Rams win, well, Archbishop Gomez gets a crate of ice cream from an Ohio ice cream parlor that opened nearly 150 years ago. Boy, that's sweet. The two are also donating money to support Catholic schools in each archdiocese, and they are inviting the faithful to join in. If you would like to do so, just go to bishopsbiggame.com. The Super Bowl, of course, as we mentioned, is Sunday, taking place in Los Angeles. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.